The hour of convening having arrived, all members of the House will please report to the floor and take seats. All members of this House will please report to the floor and take your seats. The clerk will ring the bell. All members will please report to the floor of the House. We are going to have the morning roll call. All members present will please vote green to signify their presence in the chamber, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. Doorkeepers will please close the doors and keep them closed. Well, good morning and happy Friday. Legislative Day 35. We will begin this day as we do each day with scripture reading and prayer by the chaplain, after which we will pledge allegiance to the flag of our country. Our chaplain this morning will be introduced by the gentleman from the 26th House District, Representative Mark Morris. Representative Morris.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker and colleagues. You know, there was once said that you can judge the quality of a man's life by the number of friends he would have. And I think I've reached the point in life where you can look at the quality based off of the old friends that you have. Today, I have my very good friend, Reverend Larry Wilson, that's coming to bring the message to us today. Larry and I grew up together. We attended high school together. We went to church together at the First Baptist Church in Brunswick, Georgia. You know, I would come home from leaving the military and I'd see his dad, and I would say, "How's Larry? Where's Larry? What is he doing?" And his dad would always say to me, "He's out spreading the good news of the love of Jesus Christ." His dad would, his name is Johnny Wilson, he would have been a member of the funeral home caucus if he were in this body. And I thought that that was just a father bragging on his son like we all do about our children. And then later, after his dad passed away, I learned that he and his business partner funded each month the salary of a minister in a small Baptist or a small church somewhere to ensure that the small church had their ministers. And they did that throughout their lifetime. So Larry being in the ministry probably is somewhat in his DNA. After graduating from high school, Larry was ordained at the First Baptist Church in Brunswick, Georgia. He attended Mercer University and Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary. For the last 30 years, he's been serving people through Christian ministry. Larry's pastored churches in Georgia, Texas, and South Carolina. He currently serves as the lead pastor at Northeastern Church of Columbia, South Carolina, where he's also an adjunct professor at Columbia International University. Today, he has his beautiful wife, Tuesday, who's with us, and their daughter, Amelia Bell. We're very glad to have them with us today. I give you Reverend Larry Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, Representative Morris, and members of the House. I really am honored to be here today and excited to be here with you, and I hope that what I share with you in the next few minutes will be encouraging and inspiring to you. Mark did mention that we grew up together, and several people asked me, they said, can you give us a story or two about Mark? I have a lot of stories I could share about Mark, and in 36 years of ministry, even though there were periods of time in our lives when we were obviously doing other things and not seeing each other, that was before Facebook, I would tell stories about Mark. Here's one of them that I used to tell. I enjoyed him saying just a moment ago that you can tell the quality of your life perhaps by your oldest friends. Mark and I did go to the same church. Mark started coming to our church when I was a teenager, and I wasn't committed to the Lord at that time. Mark didn't grow up in our church, so obviously it stood out to us when he showed up. And he showed up in a very different way. Mark would walk 1.5 miles to our church, First Baptist Church in Brunswick, Georgia. Mark also carried a Bible big enough to choke a mule. Have you ever seen a Bible like that? He's a teenage kid, and he's walking into church with this huge Bible. It did not surprise me how God has blessed him and used him in his life. He's always been the real deal and true to who he is, and there are a lot of wonderful stories I could tell you about Mark. Mark is exactly as he appears to be. As I shared with you, I did grow up down in the South. I grew up in South Georgia, in Brunswick, Jekyll, St. Simon's, that area. I grew up in the home of a man who owned a funeral home, and so I saw firsthand how my father turned that into a Christian ministry, and my whole life I watched as my father and those who worked with him served and cared for other people. Early on in my life, I got the idea that the best way to invest your life is by serving and leading and caring for other people. And that's exactly what you do. I went into the ministry 36 years ago. In fact, my very first church was right here outside of Atlanta in Stone Mountain, Georgia, while I was a student at Mercer University. And then as soon as I got out of seminary in Texas, I made my way back to Savannah, Georgia. I wanted to be down on the beach. You can't see my socks this morning, but my socks are loaded up with crabs, pictures of crabs, because I love the beach and love the South so much. I've had 2 life verses in my lifetime, and about 15 years ago, I changed, not replaced, I just changed my life verse, because as I got older and I started thinking about serving God and leading and helping, God led me to another verse, and I want to share that verse with you today. And many of you may have a life verse, you may have a mission statement, but if you're one of those people who might be looking for a verse out of the Bible that you could use to model and guide your life, I want to recommend this one to you. It comes out of the Old Testament. It's Micah chapter 6, verse 8. And it really puts into one sentence, one verse, what God wants from us. So it's kind of easy to model our lives after it. And here's what it says. But man, God has shown you what he requires of you: to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. That's something all of us can do. We can do the right thing. We can be merciful to those to whom we have the opportunity to show mercy, and we can walk humbly with God. The last several weeks, our church, we've been looking at the life of Moses, and many of you probably know his story, but one way to put his story into a very easy to remember idea is that he lived to be 120 years old, and his life is divided into 3 sections of 40 years each. The first 40 years, he was in Egypt. He was set to become the next Pharaoh. He had everything he could possibly want. Everything worked out well for him. He made a choice one day that caused him to lose everything. That ended the first 40 years of his life. For the next 40 years of life, Egypt became a distant memory. He got to the point in his life where he thought he was a nobody. He'd forgotten about anything God or any idea of any future that he might have had for 40 years. But then the last 40 years of his life, he spent as a leader, leading people. And God blessed him tremendously. But leading people's not easy, is it? As a pastor, that's what I've done for 36 years. And what you do and your calling is leading people. We've often heard people say that leading people is like herding cats. Have you ever heard that? Have you ever tried to do that? I one time asked a man who was leading a group of people, I said, well, how's it going? He said, it's not going well. I said, well, what do you mean? He said, leading people is like trying to put socks on a chicken. Have you ever tried to put socks on a chicken? So I've thought about that. It is challenging, the people that we have to lead. It is tough. But as I look at you, some of you I know, some of you I've met before, others of you have been reintroduced to me, and I heard your stories. But just like I'm back home from Mark, I'm from back home. I'm proud of him. I'm not surprised at the path he's taken and the way his life is turning out. But every single one of you in this room have people back home who are proud of you. There are people back home who are not surprised at what you do with your life and the way your life has turned out. And some of those people have passed on, and there are memories in your mind. But somewhere along the line, everyone in this room decided to become a leader and to make the right choices. Because you are here, you have made the right choices in your life. Moses is someone we mentioned a moment ago who led people. Now, there are a lot of stories in the Bible about Moses that I could share briefly, but I'm just going to share one. And have you ever read any story in the Bible that when you read it, it causes you to scratch your head and say, why is it like that? Here's one of those. The people that Moses were leading made some bad choices, and God was upset with them. And the Bible tells us that God decided he was going to punish them by killing them. And that's one of those questions for me. I'm like, why was God going to kill them for this decision that they made? But he was. But Moses, who had been leading them all this time, prayed to God. And in his prayer, we are able to see a glimpse of his personality and how he felt about the people that he was leading. When he discovered what God was going to do, here's his prayer. God, please, please don't do that. God, please don't wipe them off the face of the earth. Don't kill them. Then he says, if it's possible, rather than punish them, take my name out of your book. And I've studied about that book. And what that book represents in the Bible is a book that God apparently has that records the names of those people who will spend eternity with him. Now, I personally, as a leader, I'm not where Moses is. I haven't come to the point in my life where if the people I lead make bad choices, I've not come to the point where I've said, God, rather than punish them, take me out. I mean, I'm not there yet. But it is certainly, I don't know if I'll ever be there. I applaud Moses for it, but I'm not there yet. But it says something about Moses because he was able to demonstrate the great love that he had for the people that he served. I have no doubt that you love those people and the people you serve and represent. But somebody once said to me, he said, Larry, there's always room for improvement. And probably for all of us, if we look at our jobs and the way we lead the people to whom we've been entrusted, we can probably all say there's a little room for improvement, to love them as we serve them. I want to close with a story that I heard years and years ago. I'm a preacher, so I've listened to preachers. I don't know who shared the story first, but I remember I was a young preacher, and I was just beginning to pastor and just beginning to lead people, and I found out it was a lot different than I thought. And this preacher shared a story about a king and his kingdom. And here's the story. He said one day a king invited several different people, about 50 people from his community. And he invited the wealthy and the educated and the powerful, all the way down to the folks that you and I might call the nobodies. They were just common folks. He invited all of them to his banquet. He set up a long table, and on each side he had 25 chairs on this side. He had 25 chairs on this side. And then he had his great big purple king's chair at the head of the table. He opened the banquet doors and he said, let the people come in. And so the people began to come in, and they noticed where the king's chair was. And so all of them began to think, I want to sit next to the king. I want to be close to him so I can talk to him and rub elbows with him and get close to him because I ought to be there. And so people began to make their way, and the more powerful, the more educated, the more influential, not only began to make their way toward the head of the table, but they actually would ask people to move if they thought they were closer than they should be. And so when the dust settled and everybody was seated in the 50 different chairs, you had the more powerful, the more educated, the more influential, closer to the king's large chair. And then those who didn't really have any influence were down at the other end of the table. This wise king came in. He walked to his chair, and he stood beside his chair. And then he picked up his own king's chair, moved to the side, and began slowly to walk to the other end of the table. And he put his chair at the other end of the table. And for the rest of the meal, he talked to the nobodies, the non-powerful, the non-wealthy, those without much influence. And as the story goes, he said, I learned more about my kingdom today by visiting with these than I would have ever learned by visiting with the others. A life verse. God has shown you, O man, what he requires to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with God. Let's pray together. Father, we thank you so much that you make the Bible simple in a lot of places. This verse is one of them. Thank you for each man and woman who serves our great state here in Georgia. Thank you for the lives they've led. Thank you for the choices they've made that have placed them in the positions of power and authority and influence that they have. My prayer is that this message, our short time together, that you will use it in whatever way you seem fit to help all of us to do the right thing, to become more merciful, and to certainly walk humbly with you. Is our prayer in the name of Jesus. Amen. You join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Doorkeepers will unlock the doors. Chair recognizes Chairman Darlene Taylor, the chair of the Committee on Information and Audits.
Mr. Speaker, your Committee on Information and Audits have read the proceedings of the previous legislative day and found them to be correct.
Chairman Taylor, the chair of the Committee on Information and Audits, reports that the journal of the previous legislative day has been read and found to be correct. Is there any objection to the confirmation of the journal? The chair hears none, and the journal is confirmed. The clerk will read the resolution establishing the order of business for the day.
Mr. Burns, 159th moves following be established as the order of business during the first part of the period. Unanimous consents. Introduction of bills and resolutions. First reading and reference of House bills and resolutions. Second reading of bills and resolutions. Reports of standing committees. Third reading and passage of uncontested local bills and resolutions. First reading and reference of Senate bills and resolutions. Morning orders.
Is there any objection to the adoption of the resolution establishing the order of business for the day? The chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. First reading of bills and resolutions. The clerk will read.
House Bill 641 by Representative Lumsden of the 12th, Hitchens of the 161st, Powell of the 32nd, Welch of the 110th, and Fleming of the 121st. Bill be titled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 3, Title 35 of the official code of Georgia annotated relating to general provisions regarding the Georgia Bureau of Investigation.
Public Safety and Homeland Security.
House Bill 642 by Representative Pullen of the 131st bill being titled an act to provide a new charter for the city of Zebulon.
Intergovernmental Coordination.
House Bill 643 by Representative Scoggins of the 14th, Gamble of the 15th, Kelly of the 16th. A bill being titled an act to provide a homestead exemption for Bartow County School District ad valorem taxes.
Intergovernmental Coordination.
House Bill 644 by Representative Hitchens, the 161st bill being titled an act to amend an act to provide a new charter for the city of Pooler.
Intergovernmental Coordination.
House Bill 645 by Representative Wilson of the 80th, Holcomb of the 81st, and Oliver of the 82nd. Bill be titled an act to amend an act to incorporate the city of Brookhaven.
Intergovernmental Coordination.
House Bill 646 by Representative Belton of the 112th, Welch of the 110th, Rutledge of the 109th, and Dickerson of the 113th. Bill be titled an act to amend an act to incorporate and to grant a new charter of the city of Covington.
Intergovernmental Coordination.
House Bill 647 by Representative Wilson of the 80th, Holcomb of the 81st, Oliver of the 82nd. Bill be titled an act to amend an act to incorporate the city of Brookhaven.
Intergovernmental Coordination.
House Bill 648 by Representative Scoggins of the 14th bill be titled an act to provide a new charter for the city of White.
Intergovernmental Coordination.
House Bill 649 by Representative Dubnik of the 29th, Donahue of the 30th, Hawkins of the 27th, the Bar of the 103rd. Bill be titled an act to authorize the governing authority of the city of Gainesville to levy an excise tax.
Intergovernmental Coordination.
House Bill 650 by Representative Dubnik of the 29th, Donahue of the 30th, Hawkins of the 27th, the Bar of the 103rd. Bill be titled an act to amend an act to provide a new charter for the city of Gainesville.
Intergovernmental Coordination.
House Bill 651 by Representative Dubnik of the 29th, Donahue of the 30th, Hawkins of the 27th, Bar of the 103rd. Bill be titled an act to amend an act creating the Gainesville Redevelopment Authority.
Intergovernmental Coordination.
House Bill 652 by Representative Williams of the 148th, Powell of the 32nd, Hogan of the 179th, Smith of the 70th, LaHood of the 175th, and others. Bill be titled an act to amend Chapter 16 to Title 47 of the official code of Georgia annotated relating to the Sheriff's Retirement Fund of Georgia.
Retirement.
House Bill 653 by Representative Williams of the 168th, Hitchens of the 161st. Bill be titled an act to repeal an act creating the joint Liberty County, City of Gum Branch, City of Midway, City of Riceboro, and City of Waltherville Fire Protection Facility.
Intergovernmental Coordination.
House Bill 654 by Representative Glanton of the 75th, Douglas 78th, Bernal the 77th, Stovall the 74th, and Bazemore the 63rd, and others. Bill be titled an act to amend an act to provide a new charter for the city of Jonesboro.
Intergovernmental Coordination.
House Bill 655 by Representative Scoggins the 14th, Gambell of the 15th, Kelly the 16th. Bill be titled an act to provide a homestead exemption from Bartow County School District ad valorem taxes.
Intergovernmental Coordination.
House Bill 656 by Representative Jackson the 64th, Beasley Teague of the 65th, Gardner of the 57th, Dreyer of the 59th, McLaurin of the 51st, and others. Bill be titled an act to amend an act to create a Board of Elections and Registration for Fulton County, Georgia.
Intergovernmental Coordination.
House Bill 657 by Representative Stevens, the 164th, Hitchens, the 161st, Gordon, and the 163rd. Bill be titled an act to authorize the city of Richmond Hill to exercise all redevelopment and other powers under the Constitution.
Intergovernmental Coordination.
House Bill 658 by Representative Stevens, the 164th, Gilliard of the 162nd, Gordon, and the 163rd. Bill be titled an act to amend the several acts relating to and incorporating the mayor and aldermen of the city of Atlanta.
Intergovernmental Coordination.
House Bill 659 by Representative Kelly of the 16th, Trammell of the 132nd, Fleming of the 121st, Welch of the 110th, Wilson of the 80th, and others. Bill be titled an act to amend Part 6 of Article 8 of Chapter 2, Title 47, the official code of Georgia annotated relating to judges of the Supreme Court.
Judiciary.
House Bill 660 by Representative Clark of the 98th bill be titled an act to amend Article 7, Chapter 10 of Title 9 and Article 2 of Chapter 8 of Title 17, the official code of Georgia annotated relating to continuances relative to civil practice.
Judiciary.
House Bill 661 by Representative Marin of the 96th and Moore of the 95th bill be titled an act to amend an act creating a new charter for the city of Norcross.
Intergovernmental Coordination.
House Resolution 585 by Representative Gilliard of the 162nd, Holcomb of the 81st, Hill of the 3rd, Williams of the 148th, and Allen of the 40th. A resolution creating the House Study Committee on Gang and Youth Violence Prevention.
Juvenile Justice.
House Resolution 586 by Representative Gordon of the 163rd, Mitchell of the 88th, Holly of the 111th, Schofield of the 60th, McLaurin of the 51st, and others. A resolution creating a House Study Committee on Urban Farming.
Agriculture and Consumer Affairs.
House Resolution 587 by Representative Gordon of the 163rd, Mitchell of the 88th, Holly of the 111th, Schofield of the 60th, McLaurin of the 51st, and others. A resolution creating a House Study Committee on the tax credit for post-production expenditures.
Working Group on Creative Arts and Entertainment with a referral to Ways and Means.
House Resolution 588 by Representative Newton of the 123rd, Hatchett of the 150th, England of the 116th, Jones of the 47th, Bentley of the 139th, and others. A resolution urging the Department of Public Health to review maternal deaths in this state.
Health and Human Services.
House Resolution 589 by Representative Newton of the 123rd, Hatchett of the 150th, England of the 116th, Jones of the 47th, Bentley of the 139th, and others. A resolution creating the House Study Committee on Maternal Mortality.
Health and Human Services.
House Resolution 590 by Representative Bennett of the 94th, Cooper of the 43rd, Dreyer of the 59th, Hawkins of the 27th, Hutchinson of the 107th, and others. A resolution creating the House Study Committee on Georgia barriers to access to adequate health care.
Special Committee on Access to Quality Health Care.
House Resolution 591 by Representative Smith of the 133rd, Corbett of the 174th, Burns of the 159th, McCall of the 33rd, Smiley 135th, and others. A resolution creating a House Study Committee on Workforce Housing.
Agriculture and Consumer Affairs.
House Resolution 592 by Representative Hawkins of the 27th, Smith of the 134th, Hatchett of the 150th, and Lott of the 122nd. A resolution creating a House Study Committee on Health Care Reimbursement.
Special Committee on Access to Quality Health Care.
House Resolution 643 by Representative Collins of the 68th. A resolution honoring the Old Guard and dedicating an intersection in their memory.
Transportation.
House Resolution 644 by Representative Hawkins of the 27th. A resolution creating the House Study Committee on Health Care Reimbursement.
Special Committee on Access to Quality Health Care.
That completes first readers.
Second reading of bills and resolutions. The clerk will read.
House Bill 631 by Representative Holmes of the 129th, a bill to amend an act providing certain costs in certain criminal cases and certain quasi-criminal cases shall be used for the purpose of maintaining the Butts County Courthouse. House Bill 632 by Representative Jaspers of the 11th, a bill to amend an act to reconstitute the Pickens County Board of Education. House Bill 633 by Representative Williamson of the 115th, a bill to amend an act to reincorporate the city of Monroe. House Bill 634 by Representative Shannon of the 84th, Wynn of the 89th, Cannon of the 58th, Dreyer of the 59th, and Davis of the 87th, the bill relating to general provisions of labor and industrial relations. House Bill 635 by Representative Cannon of the 58th, Dreyer of the 59th, Gardner of the 57th, Thomas of the 56th, Schofield of the 60th, and others, a bill to provide a new homestead exemption from City of Atlanta ad valorem taxes. House Bill 636 by Representative Shannon of the 84th, Scott of the 76th, Thomas of the 39th, Stevenson of the 90th, Cannon of the 58th, and others, a bill relating to general provisions regarding law enforcement officers and agencies. House Bill 637 by Representative Hawkins of the 27th, Dubnick of the 29th, Donahue of the 30th, and Barr of the 103rd, a bill to create the Lula Development Authority. House Bill 638 by Representative Dickey of the 140th, Beverly of the 143rd, Washburn of the 141st, a bill to amend an act creating the Macon-Bibb County Community Enhancement Authority. House Bill 639 by Representative Setzler of the 35th, Reeves of the 34th, Parsons of the 44th, and Earhart of the 36th, a bill to amend an act creating a new charter for the city of Kennesaw. House Bill 640 by Representative Corbett of the 174th, Burchett of the 176th, Saines of the 180th, a bill to amend an act creating the State Court of Ware County. House Resolution 554 by Representative Scott of the 76th, Cannon of the 58th, Kendrick of the 93rd, resolution creating the House Study Committee on Men's Right to Know. House Resolution 584 by Representative Jones of the 25th, Petrie of the 166th, Hatchett of the 150th, Fry of the 118th, Perkle of the 155th, and others. Resolution creating the House Study Committee on exploring a floor and trade charity care system. Senate Bill 241 by Senator Gooch of the 51st, a bill to amend an act creating the Lumpkin County Water and Sewerage Authority. through second readers.
Reports of standing committees. The clerk will read.
Representative Rick Jaspers, the 11th District Chairman of the Committee on Education, submitted the following report. Mr. Speaker, the Committee on Education has had under consideration the following bills of the Senate. Has instructed me to report the same back to the House with the following recommendations. Senate Bill 68 do pass by substitute. Senate Bill 448 do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Representative Rick Jaspers, the 11th District Chairman. Representative Bill Werkheiser, the 157th District Chairman of the Committee on Industry and Labor, submitted the following report. Mr. Speaker, the Committee on Industry and Labor has had under consideration the following bills of the Senate and has instructed me to report the same back to the House with the following recommendations. Senate Bill 135 do pass. Respectfully submitted, Representative Bill Werkheiser, the 157th District Chairman. Representative Jan Tankersley, the 160th District Chairman of the Committee on Intergovernmental Coordination Local, submitted the following report. Mr. Speaker, the Committee on Intergovernmental Coordination Locals had under consideration the following bills of the House and instructed me to report the same back to the House with the following recommendations. House Bill 599 do pass. House Bill 613 do pass. House Bill 622 do pass. House Bill 625 do pass. House Bill 626 do pass. Respectfully submitted, Representative Jan Tankersley, the 160th District Chairman. That completes the reading of the reports of standing committees.
We are now going on to the local calendar. Third reading and passage of uncontested local bills. What purpose does Representative Gravely rise?
Make a motion.
State your motion.
I move that House Bill 599 be moved from the local calendar and placed onto the floor for a general vote.
Voted on separately.
Yes, sir.
Clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 599 by Representative Alexander, the 66th Douglas County. House Bill 599 states the chairperson, the Douglas County Board of Commissioners, shall be full-time and shall be paid 66% of the base salary for a Superior Court judge.
The gentleman has moved that House Bill 599 be removed from the local calendar and voted on separately. Is there objection? There is objection. Does the gentleman move? The gentleman moves. All those in favor of removing House Bill 599 from the local calendar and voting on it separately will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the gentleman's motion. The ayes are 96, the nays are 60. House Bill 599 has been removed from the local calendar, and we will vote on it separately after we vote on the other bills on the local calendar. If there is no objection, we will vote on the local calendar with the exception of House Bill 599 as a whole with a recorded vote. Hearing none, it is so ordered. The clerk will read the local calendar.
House Bill 613 by Representative Holmes of the 129th City of Flovilla. House Bill 622 by Representative Williams of the 145th Sinclair Water Authority. House Bill 625 by Representative Smith of the 70th Coweta County. House Bill 626 by Representative Smith of the 70th, City of Noonan.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered on the local calendar? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall the bills on the local calendar, with the exception of House Bill 599, now pass? All those in favor of the passage of the bills will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. And the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine. On the passage of the bills on the local calendar, the ayes are 147, the nays are 14. These bills, having received the requisite constitutional majority, are therefore passed. The clerk will read the caption to House Bill 599.
House Bill 599 by Representative Alexander of the 66th, Douglas County. House Bill 599 states the chairperson of the Douglas County Board of Commissioners shall be full-time and be paid 66% of the base salary for a Superior Court judge.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered on the local calendar? I'm sorry, on House Bill 599. The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of House Bill 599 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine. What purpose does Representative Alexander rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Is it not true that the only thing that this bill does is what the Floyd County bill did last week, is raise the account to their expense account for the commissioners from $300 to $500?
To be honest with you, I have not read the bill. I'm sure that the lady believes that to be true.
Is it not further true that
You have further parliamentary inquiry?
parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Speaker?
Okay, state your
Is it
inquiry.
not further true that everyone in this House last week voted for the Floyd County bill on the local calendar?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand your inquiry.
Is it not true that the Floyd County bill, similar to this bill, was passed in this House on the local calendar last week?
I can't speak to the differences or similarities in the two. I will trust the good judgment of the members of the body to do that. What purpose does Chairman Dempsey rise?
Did it not? Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Is it not true, Mr. Speaker, that the difference in these two is that came forward with a 100% resolution from the local governing body?
If the lady so states, I'm sure she believes that to be true. What purpose does Representative Gravely rise?
Parliamentary inquiry,
State
please.
your inquiry.
Is it not true that this bill was not received by a single purpose resolution to the local delegation, and that the Douglas County citizens did not have an opportunity for a public hearing on the increase of these expenses for each Douglas County commissioner?
If the gentleman so states, I'm sure he believes that to be true. What purpose does Representative Collins rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, is it not true that I represent House District 68, which is in the southern part of Douglas County?
I believe that to be true.
Further parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Is it not true that I would love to be able to vote and support the commission back in Douglas County, but I too would like to see that resolution passed and vetted in their local governing body before I can do that?
If the gentleman so states, what purpose does the minority caucus whip, Representative Bodie, rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Is it not true that 5 members of the Douglas County Commissioners voted or signed a resolution or a letter, Mr. Speaker, stating that they did want this increase in the expenses?
I am sure if the gentleman states that he believes that to be true, what purpose does Chairman Houston rise?
Isn't it not true that
Pardon
the
me,
parliamentary inquiry?
State your inquiry.
Isn't it not true that these county commissioners could do this without coming before us?
I think that to be true.
Thank you.
What purpose does Representative Beasley Teague rise?
Parliamentary inquiry,
State your
Mr.
inquiry.
Speaker. Is it not true, Mr. Speaker, that we try to stay within our lines? When I represent a part of Douglas County, and when people ask me for something, I try to give it to them. I try not to vote against another person's bill when it's trying to help somebody in my district, Mr. Speaker. So is it not true, Mr. Speaker, that we should consider the people that are signing on to this resolution, Heavenly Father? Ooh, help us, Jesus.
You need a glass of water?
No, I should have prayed some more, because I thought a House resolution, a bill for a raise for the county, that one of the counties that I represent, would pass this body without any problems, because the majority of the delegation voted for it, signed it. Then the county commissioners, they signed for it, Mr. Speaker. Is it not true?
If the lady so states, I am certain that she believes that to be true. What purpose does Representative Mary Frances Williams rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Is it not true that depending on which delegation you're in, sometimes all the signatures are needed, sometimes very few of the signatures are needed, sometimes a local bill is treated as a general bill, and the wishes of the delegation are not taken into account?
I would agree that the various delegations have different rules.
No.
Do you have a further parliamentary inquiry?
Yes, sir.
Okay, state your inquiry.
Is it not true that I'm not speaking about how local delegations handle bills? I'm speaking about how this body treats different local delegations and their legislation.
I'm going to let each member of the body resolve that for themselves. What purpose does Representative Al Williams rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Is it not true that these fine young students from the Harvard debate team is getting to see government at its best?
As only the House of Representatives can do it. What purpose does Representative Dukes rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Is it not true that under the rules of this House, that it has been customary that if you go with the delegation rules, that our body would pass your local legislation? Is that not true, Mr. Speaker?
I'm sure the gentleman believes that to be true.
Further inquiry, Mr.
State
Speaker.
your inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, is it not true that when we defy and evade the rules of this House, that we call for nothing but chaos? And this will be the one entity that will destroy our House, our state, and our nation. So, Mr. Speaker, it is my inquiry to ask the people, my colleagues in this House, to give the people of Douglas County the same courtesies that you will give the people of the other 58 counties of this state. Is that not true, Mr. Speaker? 158, I'm sorry. What is the other 158?
The gentleman was very eloquent, and I'm sure he believes that to be true. What purpose does Chairman Martin rise?
Mr. Speaker, parliamentary inquiry,
State your
please.
inquiry.
Isn't it true, Mr. Speaker, we hear a lot down here about local control?
We do.
Isn't it further true, Mr. Speaker, that by voting for this bill, this body would be doing the budget for these commissioners, where that they can do their own budget annually and budget their own money for their expenses and their own salaries? Isn't that true, Mr. Speaker?
That would be one perspective, I think.
Isn't it true, Mr. Speaker, that I would like to let them have the opportunity to have local control, and if they need more money to run their office, they can vote for it in a public hearing for their budget before all their voters. Isn't that true, Mr. Speaker?
I'm sure the gentleman believes that to be true. What purpose does Representative Carter rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Is it not true that either earlier this week or last week we voted local legislation as general bill, i.e. violating our own local rules?
I don't recall that we violated our own local rules. What purpose does Chairman Reinders rise?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Is it not true that Rule 50 of the House governs the difference between local bills and general bills?
It does.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
What purpose does Representative Gravely rise?
Final parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Speaker.
State your inquiry.
Is it not true that I would be more than willing to consider this, as I have all other local pieces of legislation that I have voted on with various districts throughout this state in approval of the local delegation, if I can simply have a resolution rather than a bullet point asking for an increase in the local county commissioners' expenses? Give me a resolution that the people have had an opportunity to vet. As we talk about Douglas County citizens, we will give them the opportunity to voice their opinion.
I'm sure the gentleman believes that to be true. What purpose does Representative McLaurin rise?
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr.
State
Speaker.
your inquiry.
Isn't it true, Mr. Speaker, that appeals to local control ring hollow when we stipulate exactly how a local body is supposed to manifest its intention for something?
Well, I'm sure the gentleman believes that, or he would not have stated it. What purpose does Representative Alexander rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Is it not true that I'm holding here the Douglas delegation meeting with all of the members and all of the elected officials on the date that we have of Thursday, November 29th, and Representative Gravely was present for this meeting?
If the lady so states. Okay.
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your
Mr. Speaker.
inquiry.
Is it not true that in this state house, our cap of expenses is $7,000? And what I'm asking for is to give our commissioners who have town halls and a number of events that they have in their community to raise it from $300 to $500 a month, making it $6,000, not $7,000.
Well, the members of the body can read the bill. All right. We have had a thorough discussion. All members that are for the bill are voting aye. Those opposed are voting no. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the passage of House Bill 599. The ayes are 67. The nays are 98. This bill, having failed to receive the requisite constitutional majority, has therefore failed. What purpose does the minority leader of the House rise?
Pursuant to Rule 143, would serve notice of intent to move for reconsideration at the appropriate time.
Gentleman has that right, and I think the appropriate time would be on the next legislative day. We are now going on to morning orders. We are going on to morning orders. The chair, we have a number of members that have signed up. Chair is going to ask morning orders be limited to 1 minute each. Chair recognizes for a morning order Representative Glanton.
Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, good morning. I'm joined this morning by representatives and pastors Randy Nix and Mac Jackson. I rise this morning to recognize a support group of widows and widowers, led by the visionary for the group, published author Ms. Shanita Scott Connolly. The members of the group remain committed to the legacies of their deceased spouses and have committed themselves to support one another in their new journeys. They meet together, pray together, cry together, reminisce, support, and uplift one another. They serve as a point of encouragement and inspiration for each other through the emotional roller coasters of life without their spouses. Ladies and gentlemen, would you help me and my colleagues to welcome to the People's House Ms. Shanita Scott Connolly and our beloved widows and widowers. They will be in room 230 of the Capitol if you would like to stop by to say hello. Ladies and gentlemen, widows and widowers, would you please stand that we might recognize and welcome you to the House. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House.
Chair recognizes Representative Lopez Romero for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, members. They are not present in the gallery, but we have several organizations that are here voicing their, expressing their voice and lobbying us here in both the House and the Senate. And I want to recognize mainly these group of women-led organizations, including Connecting the Dots, the Hall County Democrats, Pave It Blue, No Safe Seats, Limerick. So I want us to make sure that when we get called out of our seats to go and talk to our constituents. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Hutchinson for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, I would like to introduce to you Jacob. He's 15 years old, and he is searching for an adoptive home. Jacob is affectionately called by his caseworker as the Blue-Eyed Wonder. Like most teenagers, he loves his video games, does well in school, and truly wants to attend, and I apologize in advance, Georgia Tech. He wants to be an architect. Jacob would love to be adopted by a family who is outgoing, enjoys family activities, traveling, and most of all, likes to relax. So meet Jacob. In the books that I gave you yesterday, there's a website called My Turn Now. Every child that I introduce is on that website, and if you have anyone who's interested, they can go there to get more information about Jacob or anyone else. Thank you, and I yield the well.
Chair recognizes Representative Howard for a morning order.
Good morning, colleagues. If you love children, join me at the podium here. Today is Children's Day at the Capitol. March 27th, it's the 8th annual Children's Day at the Capitol, hosted by Voices for Georgia's Children. And if they're in the balcony, would you stand? Children. We would like to welcome the teachers from Charles Drew High School in Riverdale, Georgia, District 77. And we would like to welcome them to the Capitol, and then they'll be located down in the south wing with tables and gifts for each one of the members. Let's join them and welcome them to the Capitol. All right. Good morning. Thank you all. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Chairman Randy Nix for a morning order.
No, you come first. All right. Thank you.
Just a minute, Mr. Chairman. This House will be at order. Gentlemen may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We've got some very important people here from Troup County today. I don't know that they've made it into the balcony, but we have a group of third graders from Hillcrest Elementary School. So let's give them a round of applause. This may be them coming in the door. So.
Chair recognizes Representative Schofield for a morning order.
Starting to run. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the House, may I have your attention, please? It's with a heavy heart that we stand to say the House was defeated by the Senate at the annual legislative kickball game, 14-11. Coach Dewey McClain did a great job. As the team heckler of the Senate, I really did a great job heckling them. The mighty Casey and Joshua are MVPs, and I just want to thank all of the members that came out. We had a great time, we had a great team, and Mr. Speaker, we'll do better next year and make you proud. I yield the well.
We may need to replace the coach. Chair recognizes Representative LaRicchia for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to announce that March is Sudden Unexplained Death in Children Month. The young man that you see on the screen right there is Levi Rudd. Levi was born on March the 24th, 2011, and unfortunately went home to be with the Lord on March the 7th, 2013. But this is the 50th anniversary of the sudden unexplained death in children. The governor's issued a proclamation. I just think it's appropriate that we remember those families today on March SUDC month. And just a moment of silence. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Amen. Thank you, House.
Chair recognizes Representative Evans for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, colleagues. I rise today to call your attention to a letter from my church, North Decatur Presbyterian, that you each should have received yesterday in your office. If you haven't read it yet, I humbly ask you to. I joined with several of my church friends from the Peace and Justice Committee this past Sunday to address them to you. Some of you may have seen a personal note from me. On the third Sunday of each month for the past 4.5 years, our church reads aloud the names of the people of Georgia who have died from gun violence in the previous month, the murders, the suicides, and the accidents. There are usually 40 to 50 names. In this letter, you will find a ribbon for one of the victims, a physical symbol of a fellow Georgian killed by gunshot. We ask that you remember this person as we continue to do our good and important work. In our role, we can be peacemakers. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Chairman Hatchett and Representative Mac Jackson for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Jackson and I would like to share with our colleagues of another children's moment that could have ended in a terrible tragedy yesterday. Yesterday, the girls' soccer team from Dublin was headed to Washington County to have a game, and the bus in which they were traveling overturned and flipped. And because of the great emergency medical teams at our hospital and all of the first responders, volunteers, nurses that were off duty, teachers that were still teaching, all of the students are out of the hospital except for one, and they have had a all went home, and the families and the children are doing okay. Everybody's stable. But thank you for standing. If we could have a moment of silence to pray for the families and the one child that is still in the hospital, and thanks to all of the professionals that made this a non-tragedy. Thank you.
Chair recognizes the Minority Caucus Whip, Representative Bodie, for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to welcome my colleagues from Douglas County to, at this time, recognize the Douglas County Junior Board of Commissioners that's with us here in the Capitol today. Thank you all for being here, and thank you for what you do for Douglas County. And thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Representative Gamble, the Majority Caucus Whip, Representative Kelly, and Representative Scoggins for a morning order.
I'm doing this right? Yep. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Colleagues, it's on a sad note that we rise today, because today at 1 o'clock in Cartersville, Georgia, we will bury one of our great Superior Court judges, Judge Carrie Nelson. Judge Carrie Nelson served 17 years as the judge for the Cherokee, one of the judges for the Cherokee Judicial Circuit. He was appointed in 2001 by Governor Roy Barnes. He was a graduate of Mercer and Stetson Law, and he served our country in the United States Navy from 1970 to 73. He was the Bartow County attorney for 21 years prior to becoming a judge in Bartow, and he leaves behind his wife Terry and his two sons Patrick and Carrie, and we are all very sad that Judge Nelson will no longer be with us, but he was a good man, and we wanted to recognize his service today. So thank you.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Eric Allen to introduce the Doctor of the Day.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Dr. Thomas Bradbury, Jr. is an assistant professor of orthopedic surgery at the resident program resident program director for the Department of Orthopedic Surgery at Emory University School of Medicine. He received his medical degree from the Medical College of Georgia and completed his orthopedic surgery residency program at Vanderbilt University. He is a graduate of the Emory Clinic Physician Leadership Development Program and is the residency program chair for the Georgia Orthopedic Society. In November 2018, Dr. Bradbury participated in Operation Walk El Salvador, where he performed 16 primary and revision hip and knee arthroplasty procedures for underserved residents of El Salvador. Considering the kickball game yesterday, I may not be the only person that needs an orthopedic surgeon today, so he'll be down there to look at all kind of hips and things that you pulled that you didn't even know you had. But at this time, I'd like to introduce Dr. Bradbury and welcome him to the House.
Thank you, guys. So tough loss yesterday. Lots more talk about the game in the Senate than here. I'm available for physical and emotional support down in room 232 if needed. Thank you for everything.
House will continue to be at order. We are about to recognize some very distinguished guests that are with us. I'd ask the clerk to read the caption to House Resolution 425.
House Resolution 425 by Representative Washburn of the 141st. A resolution recognizing and honoring Dr. Curtis Jones upon being named the 2019 National Superintendent of the Year and for other purposes.
Chair recognizes Representatives Washburn and Paris for an invite resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are here today to honor Dr. Curtis Jones, the National School Superintendent of the Year. And Representative Miriam Parrish, member of our delegation, will introduce Dr. Jones.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. I'm fine, thank you. Oh, excuse me, sorry. Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Colleagues, today I rise to talk to you about a really great thing that happened in Bibb County just a few weeks ago. Our superintendent was named National Superintendent of the Year. So I'm going to just do a little introduction on him, and then he'll come up and have a few words. Dr. Jones is an educator with more than 20 years of experience. He began his career in education as a JROTC instructor with the Griffin Spalding County School System in Griffin. He became a high school teacher, principal, and then advanced to assistant superintendent before coming to Bibb County. Before his educational career, Dr. Jones served in the United States Army, retiring as a lieutenant colonel. He is a graduate of the United States Military Academy at West Point and earned a doctorate degree in educational leadership from Nova Southeastern University. Under his leadership, the Bibb County School District has been cited for its work to advance the district and its students. In 2017, the district received Georgia's College Board Linking Award for having more than 80% of juniors and seniors utilizing Khan Academy for SAT preparation. Dr. Jones works to ensure the district's instructional practices meet the needs of students and prepares them to be college or career ready. Dr. Jones was named 2019 Georgia Superintendent of the Year in December 2018 by the Georgia School Superintendents Association. The award was presented during a luncheon at the 2018 Georgia School Board Association Georgia School Superintendents Association Winters Conference in Atlanta. The School Superintendent Association announced Dr. Curtis Jones Jr. as the 2019 National Superintendent of the Year during the National Conference on Education in Los Angeles, California on Thursday, February 14th. Now in its 32nd year, the National Superintendent of the Year program, co-sponsored by AASA, VALIC, and First Student, celebrates the contributions and leadership of public school superintendents. Dr. Jones, we thank you and congratulations on your great honor.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Mr. Speaker, members of the House, thank you so much for letting me come. With me today is the president of our school board, Mr. Lester Miller. Also with me is my wife of 41 years, who's also a career educator and taught me more than anything I know about education, as well as two other assistant superintendents, Dr. Tansy Kilcrease and Dr. Lori Rogers. It's important that I share who these individuals are for this simple reason. In 2015, I was the 7th superintendent named for Bibb in 5 years. We had issues. But because of a great Board of Education that came together and because of a local community that decided to be focused on us, we have been able to turn the culture around. Our graduation rate went from 58% to 78%. We're continuing to have more dual enrolled students. In 2015, we had 35. Now we have over 500 dual enrolled students. It would not be possible. As I leave you, I just ask you to do this. Please continue to support public education. Please continue to help us find great teachers who can come into our classrooms. The colleges are not producing enough for us, and we're having to go to extra means to find teachers. Every child deserves a great teacher, and with your continued support, we will find them. Thank you for what you do.
Clerk will read the caption to House Resolution 636.
House Resolution 636 by President Beverly, the 143rd. A resolution recognizing the Harvard Debate Council Diversity Project and for other purposes.
Chair recognizes the Minority Caucus Chair, Representative Beverly, for an invite resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Harvard Diversity Project is a subsidiary of the Harvard Debate Council at Harvard College, an Atlanta-based pipeline program that provides African-American youth exposure to accelerated training in critical thinking and civic engagement. The inaugural cohort made history in July 2018 by gaining first place in the Harvard Debate Council's annual residency program, where 400 gifted youth from around the world participated. I'd like to recognize them today. If they're standing in the gallery, and these, could y'all please stand and have the House recognize you? Thank you. And Mr. Speaker, if you don't mind, I would like to have Peyton Gunner come, a member of that inaugural class, and say a few words. Peyton.
Good morning. My name is Peyton Gunner, and I'm an alumni member of the inaugural class of the Harvard Debate Council Diversity Project. We are a phenomenal group of 25 African American students now in the second cohort who are trained intensively for 6 months in public speaking and debate, and then pipelined to Harvard College to compete in their competition for the Debate Council. Last year we went, not only won, but dominated an international competition. We believe very strongly in changing the narrative, and it becomes becomes easier to advocate for that when we see it developing and changing in a room in our own city. So I'd like to thank all of you for letting us be here, and specifically Representative Berkeley for inviting us, because it means so much to see people in the same places we aim to be in. Thank you.
Clerk will read the caption to House Resolution 235.
House Resolution 235 by Representatives Ballinger, the 23rd, Hatcher, the 150th, Lott, the 122nd, England, of the 116th, Burns, the 159th, and others. A resolution honoring CASA in Georgia on CASA Day at the state capitol and for other purposes.
Chair recognizes Chairman Ballinger for an invite resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, we talk a lot down here about doing everything for the children. And as Chair of Juvenile Justice, I've gotten to know some tremendous individuals that have given so much to the children of Georgia. And today we have the honor of recognizing Dwayne. Dwayne was the director of Georgia CASA for over 30 years, and it is my pleasure to introduce him, somebody who has truly dedicated himself to the children of Georgia.
Thank you very much. I just really, Chairman Ballinger, thank you, and Mr. Speaker, I just really appreciate this. I'm kind of a little bit stunned because I didn't realize this was the primary thing. I know we've celebrating 30 years of CASA service in Georgia, and I can say of 18 of those years that I've served has been the highlight of my life, and working with such wonderful people. Tens of thousands of volunteers throughout the state that work diligently along with the staff throughout the state to advocate for the best interests of the children in Georgia. It's just such a privilege to have worked with the child welfare system, with all the partners and all the wonderful people that are dedicated to making a difference in the life of children. While I'm here, I just wanted to recognize Nikki Vaughn. She's a former, one of the founders of Georgia CASA that started the CASA movement 30 years ago. And they started CASA with a very strong foundation. And here we go, 30 years later, it's still a strong foundation. We have the current leadership here. We have Jen King is the executive director, and Angela Tyner is policy director, development director. We have board leadership, and we have a gallery full of CASA supporters and staff and just wonderful people. So, as being, this is the first time I put on a tie since I retired, which is about 6 months ago. So it's just really good to be here today. I have enjoyed all my time in working and serving the children of Georgia. And this is probably my last time I'll get to say to you all, but thank you so much. You've been along with this journey for 30 years, along with Nikki Vaughn and all of those that followed her and helping build CASA to what it is today. So thank you very much.
Chair recognizes Representative Chokas for a morning order.
Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, it is indeed an honor for me to recognize some dynamic young ladies from Marion County. Young ladies, stand up. The Marion County Lady Eagles won their first basketball state championship on March 6, defeating Calhoun County 50-38. It's the first girls' state championship in school history, and it just goes to show that there's no substitute for hard work.
The Lady Eagles only lost one game this season with a record of 28 wins and 1 loss. And accompanying the championship team are Glenn Tidwell, please stand up, our Marion County Superintendent, Jamie Pinicello, the principal, and of course, the star head coach Fran McPherson. Please join me in welcoming the state championships, the Lady Eagles. Go Eagles! Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
We are now going on to the rules calendar. We're going on to the rules calendar. Clerk will read the caption to Senate Bill 227.
Senate Bill 227 by Senator Martin of the 9th, Henson of the 41st, and Dugan of the 30th, to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 40-2-86, the official code of Georgia annotated relating to special license plates promoting and supporting certain worthy agencies, funds, or nonprofit corporations. This bill having referred to the Committee on Motor Vehicles. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by floor substitute.
Chair recognizes Chairman Silcox to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The substitute to House Bill 56 is on your desk. House Bill 56, of course, would allow manufacturers and distributors to purchase an emission-free green leaf tag for their electric vehicles. And of course, the House passed this early in the session. Senate Bill 227 is just combined with my bill, and this would create a license plate for the Georgia Alliance of Boys and Girls Clubs, as well as the Autism Alliance of Georgia. So I ask for your favorable consideration, and I'll yield the well if there are no questions.
You do have a question if you care to yield.
I do.
Chair recognizes Representative Turner to your left for a question.
Thank you. Will the lady yield?
Yes, I do.
Isn't it true that according to the CDC, 1 in 84 children in Georgia are diagnosed as being on the autism spectrum?
I do understand that is true.
And will you further yield?
Yes, I do.
Isn't it true that early intervention for treatment has been shown to be extremely advantageous and positive outcomes for these children? And that is one reason why autism awareness is so critical to helping these kids.
Representative Turner, you know what you speak, and I appreciate your kind words.
Thank you for bringing this.
Thank you. If there are no further questions, I'll yield the well.
No further questions. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to withdrawing the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is withdrawn. Is there any objection to adopting the floor substitute offered by the representative from the 16th District, Representative Kelly? The chair hears none. The floor substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none, and the report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of Senate Bill 227 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the passage of Senate Bill 227, the ayes are 163, the nays are 1. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to Senate Bill 212.
Senate Bill 212 by Senator Martin of the 9th, Miller of the 49th, and Kirk of the 13th. To be titled an act to amend Code Section 4527 of the official code of Georgia, annotated, relating to examination of applicants so as to revise the criteria by which the Department of Driver Services shall authorize certain licensed driver training schools. This bill having referred to the Committee on Motor Vehicles. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Chairman Alan Powell to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and ladies and gentlemen of the House. Bring to you today Senate Bill 212. This is a bill we passed out of this House last year, went over to the Senate, and as usual, some of the silliness that they do, they just didn't get to it on the last night. So this year I decided, since they can act so stupid at times, I got them to put the bill over there and send it back to us so we can handle it this year and not wait until the end of the last day of the session. Let me tell you a little bit about this bill and bring your memories back up to the folks that was here last year. Back about 15 years ago in 2004, we did the Teen Driving Act, and it required what we've always called the 30 and 6-hour course. 30 hours classroom training, and then 6 hours behind the wheel training. Somewhere in the last 12 or 14 years, we also allowed the licensed driving schools to administer the driving tests for the Department of Driver Services if they had taken the course at their schools. Well, we also authorized back during that period of time the Teen Drivers Act, we authorized students to be able to take online courses. Well, as you know, you can take that 30-hour online course, but you just can't get that 6 hours hands-on driving experience over the internet. Or if they can, then there must be somebody in the Senate that does that. What we've done is we have allowed now for the licensed driving schools. And we continue to say that those schools who have been in business for over 2 years and showed a track record that they're legitimate driving schools, that they can then, for students who take the 30-hour online course, that they can then go to a driving school, licensed driving school, and they can take the 6-hour hands-on driving experience, and then that school can then administer the DDS test. That's quite simply what it does. A lot of questions that came up about the 2-year experience. For those of y'all that don't understand it, both in anything that's licensing that deals with motor vehicles, whether it's DUI schools or whether it's driving improvement schools, once upon a time we had a very shaky experience in Georgia. That a lot of folks would jump into the business, they'd get them a license, and then they'd start selling them tickets and them licenses. And this is just an abundance to be sure that these aren't mills or licensed mills. And with that, I'd be certainly grateful for your vote for this bill. This will finish up half of my 2018 agenda, and I would certainly appreciate your help, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
You have questions if you care to yield.
Yes, sir, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Representative Bentley to your left for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it not true that you spoke quite lengthily about your legislation, and I'm just curious to know, does your legislation have anything to do with the funeral industry?
I'm sorry, would you repeat that?
Is it not true that you spoke for quite some time about your legislation? You had a lot to say, and I'm just curious to know, does your legislation have anything to do with the funeral industry?
Absolutely it does, because if these young drivers aren't properly trained, then they're killing folks and you get the remnants.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you. Thank you for your answer.
Thank you for your question.
You have another question if you care to yield.
I'll be more than glad to.
House will be in order. Chair recognizes Representative Hutchinson to your right for a question.
Does the gentleman yield? Yes.
Wave your hand. I can't see you.
To your right.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it not true that I have a 16-year-old son who's about 90% finished with one of the classes that you're mentioning in your legislation?
If a lady says so, it must be true.
Do you further yield?
Certainly.
Is it not true as if that class were able to give my son the test instead of me taking him to the DMV, that would make my life a whole lot easier?
Absolutely, to give you more time to take care of the people's business down here.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do you further yield?
You know, Mr. Speaker, it's a Friday afternoon, and if we hadn't had so many morning orders, we could already been halfway home by now. But I think everybody understands the gist of this bill. We passed it last year. We're passing it again this year. So, you know, anybody wants to ask me a question, they can come back there if it's anything other. And no, I don't want to answer any questions from Al Williams, because we'll be up here in a comedy skit. Mr. Speaker, I would certainly appreciate the favorable consideration of this bill.
Gentleman has yielded the well. Chair recognizes the Speaker pro tem to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just wanted to share that earlier I had shared with the chairman that I had some concerns, but my concerns were primarily because I couldn't see the parts that were in current law that are being unaffected, and I had some concerns that we were changing some other areas. But upon further discussions with the chairman and meeting with Ledge Council, I realized the bill only affects unlicensed drivers age 17 and under as one category, and young drivers, well, drivers, unlicensed persons 18 or older who want to take their driver's skills test at a private licensed driving school. It does not affect anything else in current law. If you want to take a test at a licensed private driving school, current law requires, if you're 17 and under, you must take a 30-hour in-classroom test, a 6-hour skills on the road class or a training course, and then you're allowed to take the test. What this bill does is allows a young person 17 and under to substitute the 30-hour class for the 30-hour online course, so it gives them more options. If you're 18 and older, current law allows you to take your test at a private facility, but again, you have to take the 30-hour classroom test, the 6-hour skills course. It actually omits that completely. They don't have to take the 30-hour classroom course or online course, because their alternative, if they're 18 and older, is they can just show up at a Department of Driver Services location with no classroom experience or skills test because they learned otherwise how to drive and take the test. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
You have no questions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield the well.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass. All those in favor of the passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. What purpose does Representative Momtahan rise?
Mr. Speaker, pursuant to rule number 133, I'd like to excuse myself from this vote.
Gentleman has that right, and the journal will reflect that. What purpose does Representative Prince rise?
Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Room 133, I'd like to excuse from this vote.
The gentleman has the right, and the journal will reflect that fact. Those in favor of the bill are voting aye. Those opposed are voting no. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines on the passage of Senate Bill 212. The ayes are 165, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to Senate Bill 140.
Senate Bill 140 by Senator Harbison of the 15th, Karen Shack of the 48th, and Burke of the 11th, to be entitled an act to amend Article 3, Chapter 13 to Title 45 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to the World War I Centennial Commission, so as to extend the sunset provision. This bill has been referred to the Committee on Defense and Veteran Affairs. That committee recommends that this bill do pass.
Chair recognizes Representative Vance Smith to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, Senate Bill 140 is a date extension. On the bill, you'll notice that it has July the 28th, 2019. We're going to extend the date to December the 31st, 2019. There is a statue being built in Warner Robins to honor World War I pilots. And I'm fortunate to be part of the Muscovy delegation, and representing that delegation, we had a gentleman from Columbus, Georgia, Eugene Ballard, who was a World War I pilot. For the gentleman to finish this statue and this recognition down at Warner Robins, he needed a little extra time. It doesn't include any money, so we're just extending the date. I certainly would appreciate your favorable consideration, and if there are no questions, Mr. Speaker, I'll yield the will.
You do have a question if you care to yield.
Yes, sir. I'll yield for one.
Chair recognizes Representative Chokas to your left for a question.
To the gentleman yield, will you yield?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention, and I greatly appreciate and support this legislation, but Sutherfield in Americus, Georgia, is the oldest active airport in the Western Hemisphere. And it was started as a World War I Air Force base. So I want to thank you for this legislation. It's very important that we remember. Thank you, and I plan on supporting it.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Appreciate your consideration.
You have a gentleman has yielded the will. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines on the passage of Senate Bill 140. The ayes are 165, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to Senate Bill 1.
Senate Bill 1 by Senator Parent of the 42nd, Jordan of the 6th, Jones of the 22nd, Kirk of the 13th, Black of the 8th, and others to be entitled an act to amend Title 40 of the official code of Georgia annotated relating to motor vehicles and traffic so as to provide for a penalty for hit and run accidents that result in serious injury. This bill having referred to the Committee on Judiciary and Non-Civil. That committee recommends that this bill do pass.
Chair recognizes the Minority Caucus Whip, Representative Bodie, to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to present to this body SB 1, which is CJ's Law. CJ's Law would provide the option of enhanced penalties for a hit-and-run driver who knowingly causes and flees the scene of an accident which has resulted in an individual's serious injury. Currently, Georgia law assigns the same penalty range to drivers that leave the scene of an accident resulting in a serious injury without regard to whether the individual was the cause of the accident. CJ's Law was inspired by a tragic case of Mr. Charlie Jones, who was hit by a car while walking in Cobb County in 2009. The driver that hit CJ failed to stop, leaving him injured, helpless, and ultimately hit and killed by subsequent vehicles on the roadway. CJ Law seeks to recognize the elevated responsibility of persons when involved in these types of accidents to remain at the scene. This law will also help victims and their families to obtain justice if a driver does not, or if a driver does leave the scene of an accident that causes serious bodily injury. Our House member, Representative Mabel Thomas, worked very hard last session in getting CJ's Law passed in this House. But the clock ran out in the Senate before Sunday died. CJ's Law is truly a bipartisan bill with 3 Democratic senators and 3 Republican senators sponsoring SB 1. Also, the Prosecutor and Attorney's Council of Georgia, PAC, fully supports CJ's Law. With that, I ask each member of this House to vote yes to CJ's Law. Mr. Speaker, I will yield the well for any questions at this time.
You have a question if you care to yield.
Yes, I yield, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Representative Hughley to your left for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, ma'am.
Isn't it true that a couple of years ago on my morning walk, I had the unfortunate occasion to find a young man whose feet were just sticking up in the air. He had been hit the night before, and the driver had left the scene and cut off his life. He was a senior in high school, and I'm so very happy that this particular measure is going forward. So thank you for the bill.
Thank you, Madam Representative. Mr. Speaker, if there are no more questions.
You do have one more if you care to take it.
I will yield for one more.
Chair recognizes Representative Perkle to your right for a question.
Yes.
Will the gentleman yield?
Yes.
I do have a question on line 35, and I apologize for not coming to you before. I did not look at this fully. You are an attorney and I'm not.
Yes.
Any person who without malice or forethought proximately causes an accident. I want to make sure that this is my question.
Yes, sir.
If there is an 18-year-old kid that's driving a pickup truck and a Walmart sack comes out of the back of his truck and lands on the windshield of someone behind me, and the 18-year-old looks in the rearview mirror and he sees something going on, but he keeps going, will he have violated this law?
Technically, yes, because he's the proximate cause of the injury, in fact. So basically what CJ Law wants to make sure we do is the individual that one causes the injury, which is the proximate cause, and the individual known or should have known that it was going to cause an injury by, in your case, the individual looking in their rearview mirror, and that individual failing to stop to render assistance, he will be in violation of CJ's Law.
Will the gentleman further yield?
Yes.
So that 18-year-old will then be subject to a felony and imprisonment of up to a year? Is that correct?
He will be subject to whatever the courts deems appropriate for that particular offense, sir.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir. Mr. Speaker, if there are no more questions, I will yield the will at this time.
Well, you do have more questions, but it's up to you.
I will yield at this time, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman has yielded the will. Chair recognizes Representative Abel Mabel Thomas to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and members of this august body. I rise as the author of CJ Law and ask for your favorable consideration. As some of you may know, this is the same bill that passed out of this body last year and passed the Senate, but with some untimely amendments. We could not agree to the Senate amendments, though. Hence, we in the interim started again. In the Senate, it is Senate Bill 1. In the House, it is House Bill 88. And the law, CJ Law, may not bring our loved ones back, but it will serve a level of justice for families whose lives have been destroyed by this serious offense. We felt it was time to modernize Georgia statutes regarding hit and runs that have not been updated since 1999. I hope that this meaningful legislation encourages drivers to stop after accidents and have compassion for our families. As already been stated, CJ was a 23-year-old young person out of Cobb County that was struck by one driver who did not stop. And subsequently, another driver came by, actually with a truck, hauling a trailer, and hit him, which ultimately caused his death. And we believe that we should not every day on the news have a story about someone hit and run, whether it's a police officer being hit, whether it's a person just walking by and the car comes up on the sidewalk and hits them. We believe that there needs to be also what we would call a public education campaign that would maybe go along with this bill so that people would know that there are enhanced penalties if you do not stop and show character and compassion. The family of CJ comes every year to Cobb County to lay a wreath on his grave, as well as to ask for the person who hit him to turn themselves in. This has been the 10th year. One thing we have been able to do is to get the Cobb County commissioners to put additional lighting in that particular area so that it may not happen to another person on that apparently dangerous road. So I just would like to say to you, this is something that needs to be passed and needs a public education campaign, maybe the Office of Highway Safety, to let people know, because it's not about necessarily just giving penalties. It's about letting the drivers know, with all the distractions that some way or another we have, that for us to be caring and to save a life, because we believe in many cases if the person had a stop, that they would have been rendered some type of care, and that hardship would not be on that family and over many families that when a case like this happens. So I would like to say that the pastor this morning spoke about do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with God. And based upon that spirit, I know that the highest form of justice is a pardon. Therefore, I would like to thank former Representative Rick Golick, former Representative Willett, current Representative Extraction, Representative Reeves, Representative Dreyer, Representative Bodie, Representative Powell, Representative Hughley, Representative Kendricks, Representative Dickerson, our speaker, for their assistance and support as we move forward to pass CJ Law and began to put compassion and character back in our highways and roadways. Thank you, and I ask for your favorable consideration. I yield the will, Mr. Speaker.
Lady has yielded the well. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. The chair of the Judiciary Non-Civil Committee, Chairman F. Strachan, is recognized for the chairman's time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, I know it's late on Friday. We've don't have many bills before we can get on the road here, but I just wanted to explain this bill came out of Judiciary Non-Civil and give you a little background. What happened was the prosecuting attorneys identified that there's a gap in existing law. So serious injury by vehicle requires that an offense of DUI or reckless driving be committed in order to have a basis to bring the charge. But there are circumstances when a motorist knows that somebody has been seriously injured in a wreck and the person runs from the scene or doesn't follow existing state law to stay at the scene and provide his or her information, which is already required. And the gap here was if you have very serious injuries, so we're talking about organic brain tissue, a loss of a member of the body, very serious things that have occurred, that there needs to be something to reflect the seriousness of leaving the scene. Also, you notice that in committee, and to the representative's question earlier, in committee we actually put in here that you have to know that the injury has occurred. So it's new, and so it's something flew out of the truck, and that element I'd submit might be difficult to prove. What we've done here is if you know that an injury's occurred and you leave the scene, there's a gap in existing laws, what our prosecutors have told us. And so that's why this bill is needed, and it was determined that rather than changing the hit and run statute, that we ought to look at this serious injury by vehicle statute and have a subsection C, which is what you see on the second page here. I hope that provides some clarity. I'll be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Did you waive for questions?
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes Chairman Setzler to your right for a question.
Does Jim yield?
Yes, sir.
So to be clear for our members here, if an accident's caused, the gentleman talked about a bag or something or a tarp that flies off of a truck, isn't it true that for somebody to be prosecuted under this, the prosecution would have to demonstrate beyond a reasonable doubt that there is actual knowledge or a clear duty to have known that there was an injury? That if the prosecution can't demonstrate knowledge or clearly should have known, there's no criminal exposure here.
Yes, sir, that is an element in this bill. Line 36, the person knew resulted. And so, yes, sir, you're exactly right.
So if a tarp flew off and the person didn't know that it happened, or there's some ambiguity about that, the prosecution would have to demonstrate beyond a reasonable doubt that they did in fact know for there to be any criminal exposure under this.
That's correct. I'm in agreement with your statement. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Speaker, it's late on Friday. I'm going to yield the well, ask for your favorable consideration.
The previous question has been ordered. On Senate Bill 1, is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. What purpose does Representative Dukes rise?
It was really me. I hit the wrong machine.
What purpose does Representative Thomas rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Is it not true that I forgot to mention that Senate Bill 1 is the same as House Bill 88 on our side, and so both bills were moving at the same time? Thank you very much.
If the lady so states. Members are voting green in favor of the bill and red opposed to the bill. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the passage of Senate Bill 1, the ayes are 131, the nays are 34. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Resolution 261.
House Resolution 261 by Representative Newton of the 123rd, Cooper the 43rd, Burns the 159th, and others. A resolution creating the Joint Study Committee on evaluating and simplifying physician oversight of mid-level providers. This bill having been referred to the Committee on Health and Human Services. That committee recommends that this resolution be adopted by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Representative Newton to present the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Colleagues, H.R. 261 regards formation of a study committee to research, explore, and then advise this body on appropriate guidelines for physician oversight and delegation of authority to some valued healthcare providers such as physician assistants and nurse practitioners. When they walk in a doctor's office or a hospital in Georgia, Georgians have a high expectation regarding the training, the testing, and the experience of their physician or their surgeon. This confidence results largely from a rigorous licensing process required to have a license to practice medicine. Healthcare has always been a team approach with doctors, nurses, and so many others delivering care and participating. But in order to meet the demands and the access and quality that we need, the significant value is added by having nurse practitioners and physician assistants a valued part of that team. H.R. 261 will establish a study committee to explore and research how and when it's appropriate to delegate certain aspects of care to these valuable providers and teammates. I'd be glad to answer any questions about the bill. There is an amendment at the appropriate time.
You do not have any questions.
If I may offer an amendment, Mr. Speaker.
I will have the amendment read when you return to your desk.
Yes, sir.
You can speak to it by way of parliamentary inquiry. How about that?
I'll do that, yes, sir. Thank you for your support for this and taking moving Georgia forward.
There is an amendment to the bill. Amendment is offered by Representative Kelly and Representative Newton. It is AM 331-1860. The clerk will read the amendment.
AM 331860. Amendment offered by Representative Kelly, the 16th, Newton of the 123rd. Amend the House Committee on Health and Human Services substitute to H.R. 261, LC 337831S, by striking joint on line 1 and inserting in lieu thereof House. By striking lines 14 through 25 and inserting in lieu thereof the following. Now therefore be it resolved by the House of Representatives. Number 1, creation of a House Study Committee. There is created the House Study Committee on evaluating and simplifying physician oversight of physician's assistants and advanced practice registered nurses. Number 2, members and officers. The committee shall be composed of 3 members of the House of Representatives to be appointed by the Speaker of the House of Representatives, who shall designate one of such members as chairperson. By striking co-chairpersons on line 29, 41, 45, 49, and 51, and inserting in lieu thereof chairperson. By striking Senate and the on line 38. By striking Secretary of the Senate and the on lines 50 and 52. This amendment is printed, distributed, it's on your desks.
What purpose does Representative Newton rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Sir, I believe it's true that this was originally intended to be a joint House and Senate bill, but due to the stress of crossover day and the demands on this body that went long into the night, it was elected that this would be better if we could do it as a House study committee. There is a companion bill it's also true that there's a companion bill in the Senate with the same amount, and the intention is for the two committees to meet together to deal with this important issue.
I believe that to be true.
Thank you, sir.
All right, is there any objection to the previous question being ordered on House Resolution 261? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. There is an amendment that has been read. It is AM 331860. Is there objection to the amendment? Is there objection? The chair hears none, and the amendment is adopted. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute as amended? The chair hears none. The committee substitute as amended is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this resolution now be adopted? All those in favor of the adoption of the resolution will vote aye. All those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine. On the adoption of House Resolution 261, the ayes are 161, the nays are 2. This resolution, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Yesterday, Senate Bill 132, Senate Bill 133, and Senate Bill 32 were all postponed until the next legislative day. Each of those three will be postponed once again to the next legislative day. Senate Bill 95 will be postponed to the next legislative day. Senate Bill 149 will be postponed to the next legislative day. What purpose does Representative Paris rise?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to make a motion.
State your motion.
I move that rules be temporarily suspended so that a bill may be read for the first time and assigned to committee, please.
The representative has moved that the rules of the House be temporarily suspended to allow a bill to be read for the first time and assigned to committee. The clerk will read the caption.
Unnumbered House Bill by Representative Parrish of the 142nd to be entitled an act to authorize the governing authority of Macon Bibb County to levy an excise tax pursuant to subsection B of Code Section 48-1351.
On the lady's motion that the rules of the House be temporarily suspended to allow a bill to be read for the first time and assigned to committee, is there objection? Is there objection? Chair hears none, and it is so ordered. Intergovernmental coordination. The clerk will read the caption to a group of privileged resolutions.
Recognizing John Cook for his outstanding accomplishments in sport of basketball, commending Coach Ryan Dyer and the North Paulding County High School boys basketball team for winning the 2019 All-County State Championship. Recognize Errol Owens for her outstanding accomplishments in sport of basketball. Recognizing Imani Smith for her outstanding accomplishments in the sport of basketball. Recognizing Jacob Harris for his outstanding accomplishments in the sport of basketball. Commending Coach Scott Green of the North Paulding girls basketball team for winning Coach of the Year, All-County Awards for 2018-2019 season. Recognizing and commending Jay Griffin Doyle upon the grand occasion of his retirement. Recognizing April 14, 2019 is Sikh Awareness and Appreciation Day at the State Capitol. Honoring Tiara Fletcher for her accomplishments as an outstanding woman in STEM. Recognizing and commending Raymond Tweet Williams. Recognizing and commending Dr. Joyce Dorsey. Honoring the life and memory of Rodney Murphy Sr. Honoring the life and memory of Leland Howell Hal Ivy. Commending and recognizing the Georgia Long-Term Care Ombudsman Program for 40 years of advocacy for older Georgians and individuals with disabilities who reside in long-term care facilities and for other purposes. That completes the reading of the privilege resolutions.
Is there any objection to the adoption of the privilege resolutions? The chair hears none, and the resolutions are adopted. If you have signed up for an announcement, be making your way to the front of the chamber. I want you to join with me in wishing a happy birthday today to Representative Pat Gardner. Happy birthday. On Sunday, it will be the birthday of Chairman Jimmy Pruitt. On Sunday, it will be the birthday of Representative Brian Prince. Chair recognizes Representative Cannon for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The City of Atlanta delegation will be having our full meeting immediately upon adjournment in room 605 of the CLOB. We will be discussing affordable housing and having our subcommittee during that time. Lunch will be provided. See you there.
Chair recognizes Representative Washburn for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, we are celebrating the Cherry Blossom Festival in Macon this week and next, and so I would like to invite you to come down to Macon and enjoy the beautiful cherry blossoms and all the activities that are going on there. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Representative Evans for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The DeKalb delegation will meet upon adjournment, and we will have pizza for lunch and in room 606 of the CLOB. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Chairman Hitchens for an announcement.
The Public Safety and Homeland Security Committee will meet briefly at 1 p.m. in 406 LOB.
The chair recognizes the Majority Leader of the House for a motion.
Mr. Speaker, I move that this House stand adjourned until 10 a.m. Monday, March 25th, 2019.
The Majority Leader has moved that this House adjourn until Monday, March 25th at 10 a.m. All those in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it. This House will be adjourned until Monday morning, March 25th at 10 a.m.